one of the major benefits of filing the green card application is allowing people a basis to remain in the United States, especially now that we are seeing, unfortunately, a higher terminations for H-1B L1 employees. This has become a real boon to those applicants who were laid off and now have an alternate way of staying in the US. Because by filing a green card application in the US, you are under a period of stay that's authorized by the Attorney General, which means that you're allowed to remain in the US as long as that green card application remains pending. And then if you're going to school, you can continue to go to school while that green card application is pending. For work authorization, if you're maintaining your H-1B, your L1, your E2, your OPT, you can continue to work even after you file your green card application. But let's say we're talking about the worst case scenario, that you've been terminated from those or you lost those statuses, then you can apply as part of your green card application for work authorization and travel permit. And as soon as that work authorization approved, you now have independent work authorization. So the employment authorization allows you to work anywhere in the United States. You file for it with your EB-5 petition and your green card application. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to work for a specific employer. You don't have to work in a specific field. You don't have to meet a certain number of hours. And it lets you be more marketable because employers don't have to sponsor you. They don't have to maintain any records for immigration to review on your behalf. That would be, no different than if you were a green card holder or a citizen, meaning that all you do is confirm and fill out an I-9 application, but you don't have to have any other documentation that the employer has to hold on to. That really may help you be a little bit more marketable, because a lot of companies don't necessarily sponsor immigration options. With the work authorization, you do then become eligible to apply for a Social Security number, which can help you in other areas. I know some clients have said it's be really helpful to have that in order to open up a bank account, in order to buy a house, in order to open up credit cards, and that has really been helpful for them in those areas. Advanced parole is the document that you file that will allow you to travel while your green card application is pending. Similarly to the work authorization, you would apply for the advanced parole along with your 526 and your green card application, and then you'd have to wait for that to be approved before you travel internationally. And again, the benefit of that is if, let's say, you were in the US on an F1 OPT, and then you didn't get selected for the H-1B, and now you have to rely on your work authorization, and you can work for any company in the US, but you no longer can use that visa stamp in your passport because you're not on that F1 OPT. This advanced parole document will allow you to travel in and out of the United States without needing that visa, which you no longer have available to you. So temporary trips abroad, you can use on your advanced parole and come back in on that. And as we get closer to a situation with a potential backlog, clients are trying to avoid that backlog. And you can avoid that backlog by having your green card application approved before the backlog hits. So even though we can't say for certain when the backlog will hit, clients are trying to hedge their bets and get their green cards approved as quickly as possible. And part of that is getting their 526 approved as quickly as possible, which is why we see more and more people interested in the rural projects, because those do consistently tend to see adjudications in under the 10-month mark. What I tell clients generally is if you're interested in EB-5, the best time to file is going to be soon, because I'm not sure how long the backlog is going to be. And the most important part for a lot of my clients in the US is that ability to file for a green card concurrently with their EB-5 petition. And if there's no backlog, then they can do that and they really don't feel too much impact of the backlog because they have a lot of what they want, which is ability to live in the US, work, and travel. So that kind of insulates them from a lot of the issues in the backlog if they're able to concurrently file that green card application before that backlog hits. So those are the points that I usually want to make sure that clients understand when they're looking at this potential for a backlog. So that timeline is going to be really helpful to keep an eye out on. Every time I do a consult and the clients aren't ready, or the prospective clients aren't ready to immediately file, I send them a link to the visa bulletin and say, hey, keep an eye out on this. You want to make sure that you are keeping an eye out on this so you can file your concurrent green card application. Otherwise, if you miss that window of opportunity, you don't get that benefit of the work authorization and travel permit while you're waiting for your priority date to become current. The other risk, of course, is going to be that there's a small possibility that the government publishes the visa bulletin late, so you get a truncated period of time in order to quickly file something. So you don't want to do this process rushed if you can help it. So my recommendation always is to start the process a little bit earlier so you have a little bit of breathing room and you can make the best decisions and choices in this EB-5 process. Now, Sam previously mentioned that, hey, this is not a short process. You want to make sure that you are taking your time to do things correctly the first time around. If you have a really simple case, absolutely things can be turned around quickly. A lot of my doctors don't move money around. They get money into one account, all of the money stays in that account, and they don't touch it. No other money is coming in. Super simple case. We filed cases in 2 to 3 days because of how simple they were. And then I recently had a client who had 40 properties that they were either selling or putting up as collateral for a loan. And then I had another client who had 10 friends and family who were gifting them funds, and each of them had different sources of funds. So whenever you have that complexity, that layered source of funds, it is going to take a little bit longer. And especially if your funds are coming from overseas and need to be translated, all of those are going to impact the timeline. So it's important to be realistic on how quickly your case can be filed, and that really goes hand in hand with how complicated and multi-layered your source of funds is going to be, and making sure that you're spending a little bit more time up front to try to prevent a request for evidence.